Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Anime and Chaos. This is Kyle, and I am on my own for this one today. Shai was out sick with a small winter cold, and unfortunately, our friend Maddie was also busy with family stuff, so I ultimately wound up going to go and see the second half of Wicked just on my own. Last time we all went together, which is why I was hopeful that we'd be able to all go together again, but yeah, circumstances didn't line up. So I just wanted to give my thoughts and views on everything before we got too much later in this, because at this point, as of this recording, it's been almost a month since the movie came out. And, I wanted to strike while the iron was still relatively hot. I'm also the only one of the three of us who has actually seen the play multiple times and read the book at least once. So you're still in good hands on everything when it comes to my thoughts and views to some degree. Mileage will vary, I'm sure. But I did want to just get out a few quick thoughts on this. I don't think this will be a very long video. I will say right off the bat, I was frankly impressed with how they were able to extend this second half of the act in the arc. Because if you've ever seen the play, and I'm sure many of you have, you know that the second act, whatever, typically only runs for between an hour to an hour and 10 minutes long. It depends on the production, but it usually doesn't last more than about an hour. Frankly, it's kind of a speed run, if you will. So the fact that they were able to extend this to the point of outright doubling the length of speed or the length of time that this whole arc took is impressive, and I think they did a solid job for what it's worth. I do, however, still wish that they had pulled more from the book. I really do. I am impressed that they at least tried, but it felt more like with the scene of Elphaba trying to stop the animals from leaving, because I am going to say this, I'm going to try my best not to spoil too much. I promised my friends I wouldn't. But ultimately, I'm not sure there's a way to fully not spoil things, but if you've seen any of the trailers, you've seen a fair amount already. I appreciate that we got a little bit more material when it came to the animal helping side of things that Elphaba was trying to do that was established in the first act. Because if you have seen the play, you know that almost completely disappears in the second. And that's unfortunate. It really is, because it doesn't feel like they've had enough time with the writing of the play to really be able to flesh it out the way I think they wanted to. And as a result, the second act tends to suffer in the play just in terms of story elements. There was a lot to cover and not enough time given to cover it all. And with this movie, I appreciate that they did bolster things in a way. I don't know how they managed to do it. They effectively doubled the runtime, but they did it. And I think, for what it's worth, it's paced well. I do still wish, though, going back to my point of, I wish that they had pulled just a little bit more from the book. I really do. There are elements where Elphaba is acting as a spy and is trying to help rescue the animals underground, and I wish so much that they had done more with that. I wish they had pulled more elements from that. I also wish that they had tackled the love triangle situation with Elphaba and Fiyero and Glinda a little better than they did. They did an okay job in the movie, they did. But admittedly, I think it was kind of we'll do the bare minimum. And that's about where it began and ended. And that's unfortunate. I think it could have definitely been improved upon more. I think with the runtime, they could have definitely bolstered it better and pulled more material from the book itself, which would have been ideal. That was my hope. admittedly, when I was going to go in and watch this movie, I had planned to put out a short saying, hey, I'm going to be going and seeing this finally, and give my expectations of what I was hoping for, what I fully expected to be the case, and then the middle ground of, oh, let's see if maybe they meet somewhere in the middle. Unfortunately, I did still wind up being a little spoiled before going to see the movie, and come to find out they did do some good job with middle ground, meet in the middle type stuff. It just... Things like with The Cowardly Lion, for example, it was a nice nod because in the play, the Cowardly Lion just barely exists. But even with that, it's still very bare minimum. And that's unfortunate. I had very much hoped that they would just find ways to tackle more of the elements a little better than they did. One thing of note for anyone who has not read the book or is planning to read the book or anything of the sort, I'm not about to spoil the book for you, but things are a lot heavier and a lot darker in the book. I wish, given the fact that this is a movie adaptation of the play, and it is a movie adaptation of the play, that they had gone ahead from the very beginning and taken some liberties to incorporate the book more and gone a little heavier than they did. I know that the ideal situation here is that this is supposed to be extremely able to pull in more of a younger audience in addition to its elder audience and such. A little more family friendly, if you will, because the book is not really what I would call family friendly. Just a fair warning to you out there. It's not like egregious or anything. It's just they did a lot of cleanup when they made the play. And then the movie adapted that cleanup, but didn't try to bring in a little bit more of that grit that I think would have been necessary and beneficial. The second act of the movie did do a little bit better job of that because they had more blank space to work with, really. The first act is very, very, very tightly well woven. It really is. They do such a great job with weaving the music in and out to help tell the story, and they do an equally as wonderful job in the second act. It's just that it comes at the detriment of skipping over basically entire arcs in the book itself. Genuinely, I believe that there is an arc in here that runs for about 100 pages that they just barely acknowledge and skip over in the play, and then the movie doesn't really do much of a better job of acknowledging it. They at least do something to acknowledge it, and I appreciate that, but it's not as far as I'd hoped it would be on that. That said, I enjoyed myself. I enjoyed going to watch the movie. I knew what to expect, which was that the movie was going to most definitely follow the play, and the play was kind of bare bones in the second act, and I had hoped very much that they would bolster it some with some of the book material. They did do that, so I was pleased to find that out. And I'm even more grateful, Stephen Schultz came in and did 2 brand new songs for the movie. And I've seen some other reviews for this movie so far, and I'm in agreement that Elphaba's new song, No Place Like Home, is kind of a dead stopper, if you will. It doesn't allow the story to continue to flow all that well. It's just kind of like a sudden break point, and then things just start ramping back up again. So the timing and the pacing is definitely off of that song. It's a nice song, though. It's a very nice song. I preferred Glinda's Girl in the Bubble. I think that was a very sweet song. I think its placement and pacing was a lot better. Oddly, that it quite literally breaks up the Kill the Witch song in the movie into like 2 parts. So it's having both songs basically going at the same time, but you get the first half of Kill the Witch, then you get Girl in the Bubble, then you get the last half of Kill the Witch, And it's very, very interesting in how they went about it, but I think it works. I do. I think it works very well. I think they did a good job with it. I appreciate how they tackled the visual effects of everything. I appreciate how much they tried to also acknowledge some of the other books in the Wizard of Oz series, as well as the other movies, like actually giving us an example of the desert outside of Oz that will kill you if you don't have enough magic to be able to actually withstand it. I appreciate that. I'm grateful that they did that. Not too long ago, I saw on YouTube that there were some cut scenes that were leaked and were put on there. And I saw where there was one with like kind of a Wheelers scene that got cut. And I understand why they cut it, because it wasn't really anything of a special scene. It was just a bunch of college guys on roller skates rolling around delivering the news and whatnot. But it was a nod to the Wheelers from the Return to Oz books and movie and such. And I appreciate that little nod. I appreciate that there are several nods throughout both movies that they really made an effort to incorporate, even though they didn't really get actually brought into the movie. I appreciate what they did with it. I do. I wish there could have been more, but I understand where you have to find that balance between too much and not enough. I think they found and struck a decent balance with it. I just wish, again, that there had been more, because you've got a 2-hour, 20-minute runtime. And that's a lot for an act that's half that length normally. And the result of this extension on the whole process is that, unfortunately, some of the pacing does wind up being off. You've got scenes that are drawn out longer. There's some awkward pauses here and there that I'm not a fan of. I get it. I understand it. Movie pacing is not the same as Broadway play pacing. I totally get that. I just feel like the time spent in some areas wasn't as well spent as it could have been. And I do very much wish they had just gone ahead and found a way to adapt a little bit more book material. I do. All things said, though, I enjoyed myself. I enjoyed the play. I enjoyed the acting. I'm well aware of events going on outside of the play. I'm equally as concerned as many of you are, but it's not my place, I think, to truly speak on it, as I have no bearing in any of it whatsoever. Know that there is concern, but I believe, if I remember correctly, someone mentioned that Ariana Grande basically shut all of it down and said it's not any of your business, and frankly, she is right. It's no one's business but her own. Concern can still be had, and concern is still very much there. All things said, I think they did a very, very good job with this movie. I hope that the actors will be able to recover, because it seems like it was a grueling process for many. And hopefully Hollywood will get their stuff together and stop going back down this dark path that we were finally starting to defeat, to some degree at the very least. I do very, very much appreciate what they did with a lot of this music. However, I am in agreement with some other reviewers of this movie that have said that due to the way that the pacing was done for the play and for the movie, some of the songs are better paced in the play, because they quite literally transition musically from one song into the next so seamlessly. And that's broken up in the movie to its detriment. And I agree. I very much agree. I think that that's unfortunate. However, also just always have to look at it in the case of movies and plays are different, and their pacing's going to be very different. I do appreciate how they handled No Good Deed. I think that is hands down my favorite song of the second act. Not exactly a hot take in any situation. It may very well even be my favorite song in the play as a whole, even over Defying Gravity, which is maybe a little more of a hot take. I don't know. I think they did it well. I will not say that it is my favorite version of No Good Deed. Visually, phenomenal. I think, though, that there have been other attempts at it in all the different play versions that comparing one against the other, it may be comparing apples to oranges to some degree. But at the end of the day, it's No Good Deed. And it's perfectly fair to compare one to the other and say that I think there are better versions in the play. I do. I think there's a better pacing. I think slowing the song down a little bit doesn't do it justice. And that is kind of the thing that happened with a lot of these songs, is they got slowed down a little bit. Not a lot. Like, we're talking a few seconds here and there for the sake of the pacing, but it doesn't always do things great to slow a song down so completely that it throws things off. But I do think that, for what it's worth, it was very visually impactful, and I very much enjoyed watching it and seeing it unfold. And I appreciate that the visuals finally got to match up with some of what they talked about in the play, that you are forced to use your imagination in a play, which is wonderful. I love doing that. But getting to see it truly come to life and to see the vision in a movie is something equally as wonderful. And we finally got to see that visual representation. Another thing, though, is I've already seen some talks of trying to turn this into a full franchise with Wicked 3 and stuff like that. And I'm like, how are you going to do that? Short of having Stephen Schultz himself, who came back for those 2 songs, basically write whole new music for all of the other books, because there are currently 4 books in the Wicked series as of this recording. I just don't see how they're going to be able to do that without just dropping the musical aspect entirely. And I feel like if you do that, you're half defeating the purpose, because you're going to lose half of your audience there. Half the audience for these movies has been the ones that have grown up with the musical, who love the musical, who have also read the books. And sure, if you tackle it in such a way where you drop the musical aspect, but then you try to go more book accurate, you'll get certain fans, but then you'll lose so many others. And I'm not sure how they're going to be able to make it work. I don't think really they could make it work short of an absolute miracle. And frankly, I don't think you really need to franchise everything to the point of it having 8 or however many movies they would need. I think letting this be a moment in the moment for the moment would be infinitely better, and to just let it be, because it's quite clear that this has had a toll on many of the actors as it is. So I just don't know how it would affect them going forward. It doesn't help, too, that there's so much stuff that happens in the book that was changed for the play and then adapted into the movie, that now continuity is so far off, it'd be almost impossible to adapt the books accordingly, having already lost so much other stuff for the book in the first play, short of retroactively altering things. And that rarely ever works out in its favor. So I don't know how they're going to do it, if they're going to even be able to do it. I feel like they've kind of cornered themselves already. A part of me does wish, and this is probably going to be controversial as all get out, a part of me does wish that they had just gone ahead and adapted the books for the movie's sake as opposed to adapting the play for the movie's sake. I feel like that would have been arguably better, but at the same time, it would never have been nearly as iconic or impactful. At least I don't think it would have been. Part of me thinks that would be better off if they just restarted everything with a series instead, and then broke the book up into a TV series and then did each book as a season. I feel like that honestly would be smoother, easier, better, and it would have just been more appropriate. Although I don't know if that's really the word. Just, it would have worked better. It would have flowed better. It will flow better if they do something like that. It would mean having to revisit the first book all over again, but I think that would actually work in its favor because these books are very impressive, very interesting, and I'd be curious to see how they tackle some of the more confusing elements. At least I was confused at times. There were times when I was reading the book and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm reading. And then I'd catch just enough gist of it to be able to know, okay, this is where we're at, this is what we're doing. I'm at least following you. I think it'd be an interesting attempt. I think they could do it. I think it would depend on who they went to. Would they go to Netflix? Would they go to Amazon Prime? I don't know. I am hesitant to say that either would be the best option because there's currently the format that I consistently complain about here on Animated Chaos, where right now both Netflix and Amazon Prime are insistent on going with 8-episode seasons, and that's not sufficient. It's really not. At least, though, with the book, you have enough arc material and a listing of every single thing going on here, where there are a total of 5 arcs here, so they could theoretically tackle it. I just think you need more than 8 episodes to tackle 5 arcs across a 400-page book effectively. It would take some work. It would take some work. I think they could do it. I really do, but it would mean tackling basically 80 pages per arc and across 8 episodes, so you're having to do a lot of footwork in a very short period of time. It's definitely something where if they did a series, they'd have to bite the bullet and be willing to do a proper full season in order to actually give you all the information, because there's so much backstory that gets skipped over. There's so much post-major event effects on the community as a whole and on the country as a whole in the book that really doesn't get touched on as well as it should have, and that I would have liked for it to have. But I do think it could be done. I think they could absolutely make it work. I think it could flow very well. I'm honestly gonna say that that's about it for here. I know that's kind of cutting it a little short all of a sudden here, but I feel like this video has gotten long enough and I don't want to get in too much of a rant. Long story short is I enjoyed the play. I had a good time. I found it very, very enjoyable. There were times for me where it got a little dull because the pacing was slowed down to a crawl at times, and that's unfortunate. But for the overall experience, if you enjoyed the play, I think you will enjoy this movie. I think they did a good job representing what was there and then incorporating a little bit more. I just think that for as long as this movie was, they still could have pulled more in there than they did. And there are certainly elements in there that I'm not pleased with. Cowardly Lion may have pissed me off a little bit. I appreciate he got a cameo to some degree that was there, but it didn't explain anything. It didn't explain why he was the way he had become. It didn't help the situation. It just made it a little more confusing, actually. So, I say go watch it if you haven't. I realize it's been almost a month since this movie released, so at this point, you stragglers out there will definitely at least want to take the opportunity to go and watch it once if you've been thinking about it and haven't yet. I think you'll enjoy yourself. I don't think, however, that it is as definitive of an interpretation as I had hoped that it would have been, and I think that it needed to be. But for what it's worth, I think it did a very good job with its source material and then extending it in an effective way that works. I would just like to see a full, proper adaptation of these books at this point. I think that's what's truly missing now, what I think would basically be the icing on the cake. So I'm going to call it here. This is Anime Chaos, and if you would like to see more of us, please do subscribe. We tackle all manner of material that we collectively, Shy and I, that we just enjoy. Shy is a very K-pop focused person right now with some anime type stuff going on. I'm more of an anime focused guy, and combined, we just tackle whatever material we will like. I'm honestly a big fan of Wicked, so that's why I'm here tackling this one today. But I do hope that you guys will stick around for more, because I think we're well on our way to something that's going to be really fun as we continue to figure things out. And if you have any suggestions out there for things you'd like to see us tackle, by all means, because I have some plans going on in my head for the future that I just have to figure out how I want to tackle them. But if you got any suggestions out there, any ideas, any sort of material that you might be interested in having us look at and cover, I'm game. All you got to do is just say what interests you. Anyway, that's all for today, and thank you. Subscribe, and this has been Anime Chaos. Bye.